Birthdays. For most people, they're a time of joy, of laughter, of feeling cherished by the people who matter most. But for me, that day, my day, had turned into just another page on the calendar. I woke up that morning with a soft smile, brushing my silver hair back as I sat up in bed. I wasn't expecting grand gestures, not diamonds or expensive gifts. No, that was never me. All I wanted, truly, was a call, a hug, or even a simple, "Happy birthday, Mom." Just a reminder that I wasn't invisible, that I still mattered. But as I made my way downstairs, the silence in the house was deafening. The clock ticked, the kettle whistled, and yet no phone rang, no cheerful voices came echoing through the door. My children, all grown with families of their own, were probably tangled up in their busy routines, soccer games, work deadlines, endless errands. I told myself not to be hurt, not to expect too much, but deep down, my heart ached. I remember standing by the window, watching the world outside. Neighbors were pulling out of their driveways, rushing to work. A young boy pedaled past on his bike, laughing with his friend. Life was happening everywhere. Yet here I was, an old woman in her robe, invisible even to her own family, on the one day that should have meant something. The phone buzzed once. My heart leapt. But it was only a reminder from the pharmacy about a prescription refill. I laughed bitterly at myself. Was this what my life had come to? That a text from the pharmacy brought me more attention than my own children? I tried to distract myself with chores. I swept the floor, wiped the counters, folded laundry that didn't need folding, but every time I glanced at the clock, another pang hit me. 10 a.m. Nothing. Noon. Silence. By mid-afternoon, I stopped checking altogether. The truth was hard to swallow. They had forgotten. My birthday wasn't on their minds, wasn't on their calendars, wasn't in their hearts. I sat at the dining table, staring at the empty chairs. Memories washed over me. Birthdays when the house was alive with balloons, when little hands tugged at my dress, begging me to blow out the candles so they could dive into the cake. I remember staying up all night sewing costumes for school plays or baking cookies for class parties. I gave everything I had to make my children's lives magical. And now, not even a phone call? But here's the thing about being a grandmother. You learn that bitterness only eats away at the soul, and I refused to let their forgetfulness define my worth.
So I decided to do something unexpected. Instead of wallowing in sadness, I began to plan. Not for myself, not for a cake with my name scrawled on it in pink frosting, but for them, for my family. I would throw a party, a surprise gathering they would never forget. A party that wasn't about me, but about us. Because maybe, just maybe, they had forgotten the date on the calendar. But I was going to remind them of something far greater. The power of family, the joy of being together, and the love that binds us even when life gets busy. And so, with trembling hands but a steady heart, I picked up the phone, not to wait for a call, but to make one. "Hello, dear," I said to my neighbor, Mrs. Anderson. "Would you happen to have an extra folding table I could borrow? I'm thinking of hosting a little get-together this weekend." She sounded surprised. "Of course. Is it for your birthday?" I paused, then smiled softly. "No, just for family." That was the start of it, the quiet spark that would grow into something unforgettable. I made a list: balloons, streamers, enough food to feed an army, and a playlist of songs that used to fill our home with laughter. I called the bakery, not for a birthday cake with candles, but for a simple sheet cake with the words, "Family is the real gift." The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the woman they forgot, planning a celebration for the very people who had overlooked me. But it wasn't about irony. It was about love. That evening, as I tucked myself into bed, I whispered a prayer. Not for apologies, not for guilt, but for my children and grandchildren to remember what truly mattered. For them to come together, to sit in the same room again, without phones or excuses, and just be family. I closed my eyes with a quiet strength. They may have forgotten my birthday, but soon they would remember something far more important.
The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The sting of yesterday's silence was still there, but instead of dragging me down, it pushed me forward. I decided this party would not be about what I lacked. It would be about what I could give. I started by pulling out the old recipe box from the kitchen drawer. It was worn and faded, filled with cards smudged by years of flour and sugar. Each recipe had a story. My chocolate cake, the one my son always requested as a boy, the cinnamon rolls that my daughter claimed were better than anything from a bakery, even the simple sugar cookies shaped like stars that I made every Christmas with the grandkids. As I flipped through those cards, I felt my heart swell with warmth. These recipes weren't just food, they were memories. They were proof that once upon a time, my love had filled bellies and hearts. And that same love was about to bring everyone back together. I made a shopping list that could have fed the whole neighborhood. I wasn't sure how I would carry it all, but I didn't care. Love finds a way, doesn't it? With my purse tucked under my arm, I made my way to the grocery store. Walking through the aisles, I felt people's eyes on me. An old woman pushing a cart piled high with flour, sugar, balloons, and paper plates. What could she possibly be planning? Some even smiled kindly, as though they knew I was up to something special. I stopped at the bakery counter, ordering the cake I had dreamed about the night before. "Can you write, 'Family is the real gift' in blue icing?" I asked. The young woman behind the counter looked at me curiously, but she didn't question it. She just smiled and wrote it down. Back home, I placed the groceries on the counter and sat for a moment, catching my breath. My body wasn't as strong as it used to be. My knees ached and my hands trembled when I lifted the heavier bags. But my spirit, my spirit was alive. I spent the afternoon baking pies, the sweet smell of apples and cinnamon filling the house. I stirred soups, chopped vegetables, and marinated chicken like I used to when my children were small. My kitchen was alive again, every corner echoing with laughter that wasn't even there yet. At one point, I stopped and leaned against the counter, wiping my brow. I thought about the birthdays I'd had planned for them over the years. The balloons I blew up until my cheeks hurt, the streamers I hung from every corner, the candles I lit while they squealed with excitement. Did they remember? Or had those moments faded into the background of their busy lives? A lump rose in my throat, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about being remembered. It was about reminding them.
That evening, as the last pie cooled on the windowsill, I went to the attic. Dust filled the air as I opened old boxes. Inside were photo albums, scrapbooks, and little trinkets I had kept over the years. Report cards, birthday cards, drawings made with crayons that said, "I love you, Mom." My eyes watered as I traced the faded lines of their handwriting. I decided to use some of these keepsakes for the party. A photo wall maybe, a reminder of where we came from, of the love we once shared. I pulled out an old picture frame, the kind that could hold many photos at once, and began sliding in pictures of birthday parties, family vacations, Christmas mornings. By the time I finished, the frame was bursting with memories. I looked at it and whispered, "Maybe this will remind them of who we are, of who I am." The next day I called my grandchildren one by one, but not to tell them it was my birthday. Oh no, that would have spoiled everything. Instead I said, "Grandma's having a little get-together this weekend. I'd love for you to come. There'll be food, games, and plenty of sweets." Their voices lit up with excitement. "We'll be there, Grandma," they said, one after the other. My heart fluttered at their enthusiasm. They didn't know what was coming. I kept the secret close, holding it like a gift. In a way it was. They had forgotten me on my day, but soon they would see what love looks like even when it's not returned. And with that thought, I blew out the unlit candle and smiled. The day of the gathering arrived, and I was up before the sun. My old bones groaned and protested as I stretched, but my heart was beating like a drum. Today wasn't about aches or age. Today was about love. I dressed in my favorite blue cardigan, the one my late husband used to say brought out the sparkle in my eyes. I tied my silver hair back neatly and put on a pair of earrings I hadn't worn in years. Looking at myself in the mirror, I chuckled softly. "Not bad for someone who is forgotten just days ago," I said to my reflection. The house smelt like heaven. The soup simmered on the stove, the pies lined the counter. The cake sat beautifully in the center of the table, with its message proudly written in blue: "Family is the real gift." Streamers and balloons gave the house a festive glow, and the photo frame I had carefully filled stood on a table near the entrance, waiting to catch their eyes. By noon, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped. The first of them had arrived. It was my eldest son Mark with his wife and 2 children. The kids came bounding in, eyes wide at the sight of the decorations. "Grandma, did you do all this?" they squealed. I smiled but shook my head gently. "Oh no, darlings, this is just a little surprise gathering. You'll see." Mark looked around puzzled but didn't press further. Soon after, my daughter Emily arrived with her teenage twins, then my youngest David with his wife and little boy. One by one, they all came, arms full of dishes they had decided to bring at the last minute, thinking they were helping out. They had no idea what this really was. The house buzzed with laughter and chatter. The children ran around, chasing balloons, while the adults caught up in the living room. For a moment it felt like old times, like the years when they were small, when birthdays and holidays brought everyone together without excuses. I moved quietly through the rooms, making sure everyone had enough to eat, refilling cups, adjusting decorations. Nobody noticed the effort behind it. And that was the point. I didn't want them to feel guilty yet. I wanted them to feel. As the afternoon went on, the atmosphere grew lighter. Mark clapped his hands together. "This is great, Mom. Whose idea was this anyway? We haven't done something like this in ages." I smiled but kept my secret. "Sometimes it's nice to just be together, isn't it?" I said.
Emily glanced at the cake, reading the words out loud. "Family is the real gift," she mused. "That's sweet, but whose birthday is it anyway? Is someone celebrating?" Her question hung in the air like a weight. A silence fell for a moment, the kind that makes people glance at each other nervously. The children, oblivious, continued playing, but the adults began to piece it together. David frowned. "Wait a second. Today's the 12th, isn't it?" He looked at me, his eyes widening. "Mom, it's your birthday." The room grew still. My children exchanged glances, guilt washing over their faces like a tidal wave. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes filling with tears. Mark muttered under his breath, "Oh, God." I simply smiled, my hands folded gently in front of me. "Yes, it is." I said softly. But don't worry. I didn't plan this for me. I planned it for us, for all of us to be together again. Their expressions were priceless. Shock, shame, and heartbreak all mingled together as they looked around at the decorations, the food, the photos on the wall, all prepared by the woman they had forgotten. I didn't want gifts or even a cake with my name on it. I just wanted to see you together, laughing, talking, remembering what it feels like to be a family. That's the only present I needed. Emily broke down, tears streaming down her face. She rushed to me, wrapping her arms tightly around my shoulders. Mom, I'm so sorry. How could we forget? We were so caught up in our lives, we didn't even think. Mark put his arm around us both, his voice thick with regret. You should never have had to do this yourself. You deserve more than this. You've given us everything. I patted their hands gently. Shh, don't cry. I don't want you to feel sorry. I want you to remember. That's all. Life is busy, I understand, but family is what grounds us. Don't forget that. The grandchildren, sensing the shift in mood, came over, hugging my legs and chiming in with, "Happy birthday, Grandma!" Their sweet voices broke the tension, and suddenly the room was alive with love again. But this time, it was deeper, more meaningful. As we all gathered around the table, Mark raised his glass. To Mum, the woman who reminded us what family means, even when we forgot. Everyone echoed the toast, their eyes glistening with tears and gratitude. I looked around at their faces, my heart swelling with joy. For a moment, the pain of being forgotten melted away. Because in that instant, I knew they would never forget again. After the toast, we sat down to eat, the clinking of silverware against plates filling the air. But the mood had shifted. Gone was the careless chatter from earlier. Now every laugh, every word carried a weight. My children were looking at me differently, as if they were really seeing me for the first time in years. David was the first to speak. He set his fork down and cleared his throat. Mom, I don't know how to say this, but I feel like I've failed you. I've been so focused on work, on paying bills, on making sure my own kids have everything. I forgot the one person who gave me everything. His wife reached over and squeezed his hand. He looked down, ashamed. I smiled gently at him. David, life is hard. I know that. I never expected perfection from you, only love. And I've never doubted that you love me. Don't let guilt eat you. Just remember me while I'm still here to be remembered. Emily wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. Mom, you've always been our rock. You raised us, you held us together when Dad passed. You never complained, even when you had so little for yourself. And we couldn't even remember your birthday. Her twins looked at her in shock. One of them whispered, Mom, you forgot Grandma's birthday? Emily's tears spilled over and she nodded. Yes, sweetheart, and it's the worst mistake I've made in a long time. I promise you, Mom, I will never, ever let this happen again. Mark leaned back in his chair, his voice low and heavy. You know, Mom, I always thought there'd be more time, more chances to do the right thing. I thought you'd always be here, waiting, like you always have. But tonight, I realized something. Time doesn't wait, and love shouldn't either. His words sank deep into all of us.
I let the silence linger for a moment before speaking. My dear ones, do you know why I planned this party? It wasn't to make you feel bad. It wasn't even for me. It was to show you something. They leaned in, listening closely. Life is made of moments, little ones, like sharing a meal, telling a story, or laughing until your sides hurt. Too often, we wait for the big occasions, holidays, weddings, anniversaries, to celebrate each other. But by waiting, we let time slip away. And one day, we wake up and realize we missed the real treasures. The children had stopped fidgeting. Even the youngest sat quietly, their wide eyes fixed on me. I don't want you to remember me once a year on my birthday. I want you to remember me in the everyday things. In the way I taught you to make soup when you were sick. In the way I hummed lullabies when you couldn't sleep. In the way I prayed for you every single night, even when you didn't know it. That's love. That's what I've lived my life giving. Tears flowed freely around the table now. Even Mark, who rarely showed emotion, wiped at his eyes. Emily whispered, "Mom, you always think of us first, always. Even when we forgot you, you still chose to celebrate us. How can anyone love like that?" I smiled, my heart full. Because love doesn't keep score, it just gives. And when you give enough, it comes back to you. Maybe not right away, maybe not perfectly, but it comes back. Tonight, I can feel it coming back to me. The grandchildren leaned in, hugging me tightly from both sides. Their little voices were pure and honest. "We love you, Grandma." That simple phrase washed over me like sunlight. Mark stood suddenly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We can't undo forgetting your birthday, Mom, but we can make a change, starting tonight. From now on, we won't just show up on holidays. We'll call, we'll visit, we'll check in. No excuses." David nodded quickly. "I'll set reminders, I'll make the time. I don't care what it takes. You won't ever feel forgotten again." Emily squeezed my hand harder. "We'll do better, Mom. You deserve so much more than what we've given." I chuckled softly, wiping at my own eyes. "You've already given me what I needed most. You're here. You're together. That's enough for me." The rest of the evening was different from any family gathering we'd had in years. We shared stories, some funny, some bittersweet. We talked about Dad, about the days when the kids were small, about the silly traditions we used to have but had let slip away. We laughed until our bellies ached, and we cried until we couldn't cry anymore. But through it all, there was a sense of healing. When the night finally wound down, Emily's daughter picked up the framed collage of photos I had made. She carried it over to me. "Grandma, did you really put all these together yourself?" I nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. Every photo, every memory. I wanted them all in one place." She smiled shyly. "It's beautiful, just like you." My heart melted. Children have a way of saying the truest things without even trying. As the family began to leave, each one hugged me longer than usual, whispering apologies, promises, and words of love. And for once, I believed every word. When the door finally closed and the house grew quiet again, I sat in my chair, looking at the balloons drooping slightly, the crumbs left behind, the empty glasses on the table. A mess, yes, but the most beautiful mess I could have asked for. Because this birthday, the one I had spent alone in planning, had given me more than any other birthday ever had. Proof that love, though sometimes forgotten, could always be remembered again.
That night, after everyone left, I stayed awake longer than usual. The quiet of the house wrapped around me, but instead of feeling lonely, I felt full. My heart was heavy, but in the best way. Heavy with love, with memories, with promises that tonight had sparked. I walked over to the living room table where the framed collage of photos sat. The little fingerprints of my grandchildren still smudged the bass. I traced one picture with my finger, me holding David when he was just a baby. My eyes traveled to another, Emily's first day of school, clutching my hand. Then another, Mark blowing out candles with frosting all over his face.
So many years. So many birthdays, so many moments I thought had gone unnoticed. And now I realized they hadn't been forgotten at all. They were simply buried under the weight of busy lives, hidden beneath the noise of the world. Tonight had uncovered them. The next morning, my phone buzzed earlier than usual. I picked it up to find a message from David. "Good morning, Mom. Just wanted to say I love you. Coffee soon?" Then another from Emily. "Mom, the kids want to come over after school today. They said they miss you already." And finally, a call from Mark. His voice cracked a little when he said, "Mom, I was thinking, what if we start a tradition? Sunday dinners at your house, every week, just us, no excuses." I smiled so wide, my cheeks hurt. "I'd like that very much," I told him. Later that week, the first Sunday dinner happened. The house was full of life again. Kids running, adults chatting, food spread across the table just like in the old days. Laughter bounced off the walls, and my heart felt like it might burst. Halfway through the meal, Emily raised her glass. "To Mom," she said softly. Everyone followed, glasses raised high. Not just for her birthday, but for every day she's been our anchor. We don't say it enough, but we love you. A chorus of "We love you" filled the room. I didn't need gifts or parties. I didn't need apologies or grand gestures. I only needed this, the sound of my family remembering, the warmth of their presence, the love that had always been there, just waiting to be awakened. As I sat at the head of the table, surrounded by the people I had once feared were drifting away, I whispered a silent prayer of gratitude. "Thank you," I thought, "for bringing them back to me, for reminding them what truly matters, for giving me this birthday gift, better than anything wrapped in paper or tied with ribbon." I glanced around at the faces of my children and grandchildren. They were smiling, laughing, living in the moment. And I knew, even if I hadn't been celebrated that morning, even if my birthday had passed unnoticed at first, tonight proved something far more important. I was never truly forgotten, because love, no matter how quiet it becomes, always finds its way back home. And that, I realized, was the best birthday present of all.